I want to start with what I think is the most important statement of this video. Democratic friends, if you go on like this, you're going to lose the elections and you'll deserve it. And this story is an op-ed from the New York Times, Bret Stephens, a wretched start for Democrats. The party seems interested in helping everyone accept the voters it needs. Yes, the Democrats have gone super far to the left. They're not paying attention to what happened in 2016, and they're too concerned with reaching out to the people who are guaranteed to vote for them. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party are going to vote Democrat no matter what. The Democrats need to vote, or they need to get the moderates on their side, and they're trying to do the opposite. Now, I want to come back to this op-ed because I actually want to start with this story, this opinion piece from the Wall Street Journal. There's a few things that I'm going to break down in this video. I also want to I basically want to talk about how they learned nothing from 2016. In my opinion, they're still cheating. I've got stories pulled up where they're smearing Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang because they didn't learn any, the media, how they played the game, with Bernie and Hillary. They seem to be working to a certain extent with the Democratic Party. And I'm speaking specifically about Donna Brazile questions with Hillary. It's complicated. I don't want to rehash 2016. The point is, the media is smearing the actual candidates that grassroots individuals like, and they're propping up people that people don't like, okay? And they're pushing far-left politics that people don't care for. So let's take a look at this story from the Wall Street Journal. The 2020 Democrats lack hindsight. They ignore reality and march in lockstep with their base. Did they learn anything from 2016? I'm going to have to say that's a hard no. And it's really interesting. Peggy Noonan writes that she received letters from somebody, one guy who stayed out of the 2016 election, but has decided now to support Donald Trump. And this plays into the video I did yesterday, where a Washington Post reporter overheard someone say that they didn't think they were a Democrat anymore. Once again, we're hearing the exact same thing. Do you guys know about the Walk Away campaign? They'll tell you it's a hoax. They'll tell you it's a fringe group. Well, it keeps happening. Before we read this, make sure you go to timcast.com/donate if you want to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But of course, the best thing you can do is share this video. YouTube no longer suggests my videos on YouTube for whatever reason. So I rely on you guys. If you think the video is worth watching, please share it. Peggy writes, I've received tens of thousands of letters and other communications from Trump supporters the past few years, some of which have sparked extended dialogues. Two I got after last week's column struck me as pertinent to this moment, and they make insufficiently appreciated points. A gentleman of early middle age in Kansas City wrote to say that he'd sat out of the 2016 election because he was dissatisfied with both parties. But now he's for Donald Trump, and the reason runs deeper than politics. America's elites in politics, media, and the academy have grown oblivious to the average Joe's intense disgust at being morally instructed and preached to. Quote, every day, Americans are told of the endless ways they are falling short. If we don't show the proper level of understanding according to a talking head, then we are surely racist. If we don't embrace every sanitized PC talking point, then we must be heartless. If we have the audacity to speak our mind, then we are most definitely a bigot. These accusations are relentless. We are jabbed like a boxer with no gloves on to defend us. And we are fed up. We are tired of being told we aren't good enough. He believes the American people are by nature kind and generous. They would give you the shirt off their back if you were in trouble. And that, quote, in Donald Trump, voters found a massive sledgehammer that pulverizes the ridiculous notion that Americans aren't good enough. Mr. Trump doesn't buy the guilt narrative. It's surely not about the man at this point. It stopped being about Trump long ago. It is about that counterpunch that has been missing from our culture for far too long. The culture of accusation, he says, is breaking us apart. A reader who grew up in upper middle class in the South writes of the politics of the situation. His second wife, also a Southerner, grew up poor. She is a former waitress and a bartender whose politics he characterizes as pragmatic liberal. The story goes on to say that in 2015, Trump announced, and this woman who grew up poor said Trump will win. He asked her later on how she knew, and she said, because he speaks my language. The Democrats certainly don't. Now, I want to move on because I don't want to read too much. But She points out exactly why the Democrats, in my opinion, deserve to lose. She says, what Night One did was pick up the entire party and put it down outside the mainstream and apart from the center. This is what the candidate said. They are functionally, in terms of the effects of their stands, for open borders. They are in complete agreement with the abortion regime. No reservations or qualms, no sense of just or civilized limits. They are all in on identity politics. One candidate warned against denying federally funded abortions to a trans female, of which is biologically male and would never need one. Two said they would do away with all private health insurance. Every party plays to its base in the primaries and attempts to soften its stands in the general. But I'm wondering how the ultimate nominee thinks he or she will walk this all back. If it's too extreme for America and too extreme for big parts of its old base, that they say if it's too, it is too extreme for America and too extreme for big parts of its old base that the Democrats forgot in 2016. It was as if they were saying, hi, middle America, people who used to be Democrats and voted for Trump, we intend to alienate you again. Go vote for that jerk. We don't care. The Democrats have shifted so far to the left that it's become unrecognizable to the average American. And the simplest way I've explained it over and over again, as I did yesterday and the days before, is that if you were a Democrat who voted for Obama both times, you are now closer to the Republican Party than you are to the Democratic Party. And this means the people, middle Americans who are not super political, who voted for Barack Obama, are looking at the Democrats saying, I have no idea what they're on about. So what ends up happening? The Democrats are pandering to the people who will already vote for them. You don't need to win over the people who are progressive. They're going to vote for you no matter what because they hate the president. Orange man bad. What you need to do is convince the people who did vote for Trump to vote for you. What people don't seem to understand on the far left, or the progressives, is that it's not about whether the Democrats endorse any of these positions. It's about whether they can convince enough people not to vote for Trump. None of them get it. They all went up on stage and raised their hands in favor of providing medical benefits, Medicaid benefits, to illegal immigrants. It makes no sense. It can't be. Bernie Sanders contradicted himself. So I'll tell you what's going to happen. They made the point in the Washington Post op-ed, and it's a good point. They're pandering to the base right now because they need the most active Democrats to vote for them so they win the nomination. What do you think will happen when one of these people is standing next to Donald Trump and they say, well, I believe undocumented immigrants should not be deported, should eventually become citizens, and should get government health care? And then Trump's going to be like, that's mathematically impossible. We already can't afford universal health care. Now you want to add 100,000+ people per month to universal health care? We already can't afford it. How will we afford that? And not only do we have those 100,000 that we're seeing now coming at the border with the migrant crisis, you're also talking about incentivizing people to come, saying no one will stop you, no one will deport you, and you'll get free health benefits. That's going to result in a doubling, a tripling. Who knows how many people are going to pour in? You're going to have people in Mexico who are going to be like, I got to go to the doctor. I'm going to cross the border for the next few days to get treatment. And then they'll go back to Mexico. You're going to have people who literally just come here for healthcare tourism. It makes literally no sense. Now, this New York Times piece, I'm not going to read too much into. You get the point. Bret Stephens is saying basically the same thing. He starts by saying in Spanish to make a point. He says, this is what he says. A party that makes too many Americans feel like strangers in their own country. A party that puts more of its faith and invests most of its effort in them instead of us. There you go. He says they speak Spanish. We don't. They are not U.S. citizens or legal residents. We are. They broke the rules to get into this country. We didn't. They pay few or no taxes. We already pay most of those taxes. They willingly got themselves into debt. We are asked to write it off. They don't pay the premiums for private health insurance. We're supposed to give up ours in exchange for some VA-type nightmare. They didn't start enterprises that create employment and drive innovation. We're expected to join the candidates in demonizing the job creators, breaking up their businesses, and taxing them to the hilt. I don't necessarily agree with everything he said, but he's making a point that I think needs to be heard. A lot of these Democrats were pandering to people who are not voters. Why would you need to claim you're going to provide all these benefits to undocumented immigrants in a path of citizenship? They don't vote. Oh, right? I guess they're virtue signaling to the far left? Great. Well, you just told American voters, I'm not speaking for you. Why would they vote for you? But let's move on. I got a few things I want to point out. The cheating, the media collusion. But this is another op-ed that plays into the statements of just prior. Andrew Sullivan says the Democratic candidates are in a bubble on immigration. It essentially rehashes a lot of the points brought up. People of intellectual honesty are all saying right now, dude, the Democrats went on stage and endorsed open borders. Worse still, they're endorsing essentially a permanent underclass of people who are pseudo-citizens. So what? The rich urban elites can profit off of their backs? It's a nightmare. But I want to get into the media collusion and the lies. Jeffrey Miller tweets, Vox says if you support Yang or Gabbard in polls, you must be a troll. They can't even imagine thoughtful, honest citizens deviating from their narrative. Think about that for a minute, Vox.com. This attitude is how your narrative loses. He's not wrong. We are quite literally seeing 2016 play out all over again. I kid you not. I see it. I see 2016 all over again. They're pandering to the woke far left, saying things that regular Americans don't care for, and then the media is demonizing the actual popular candidates. Bernie Sanders was the popular candidate for the Democrats. He should have won. They stole it from him. We know they did. Bernie doesn't have the same appeal anymore. He's pandering to the far left, and he's playing up identity politics, and he's lost people like me who supported him greatly in 2016. Now I'm actively supporting Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. I think a lot of their policies are bad. I don't agree with everything they say, but Tulsi Gabbard speaks on principle, and her main priority is stopping America from getting involved in foreign war. I believe there are massive private interests that make money off war. They want us to engage in these conflicts. It's not a good thing for us. You want to argue healthcare and everything else? By all means, let's allocate the funding towards war, towards domestic policy. I like Gabbard for this reason. I disagree with a lot of her other policies, but I think there's a moral position that I can't get past, in that the United States has war machines blowing people up. So that's important to me. But she's principled. She said, I think it was on Bill Maher, she said that these other politicians stick their finger to the Twitter wind and then change their position depending on what people are saying. And she doesn't play that game. And I believe it's true. Andrew Yang, same thing. Here's the thing. What is NBC doing now? Look, I'm not telling you to like Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang, by no means. I'm just explaining, I think there's a real reason people support them. They're common sense individuals, they're outsiders, and they're speaking to a real base. They're speaking principle. NBC News writes, trolls target online polls following first Democratic presidential debate. Users from pro-Trump communities on 4chan and Reddit implored fellow members to vote for lower polling candidates, specifically Tulsi Gabbard and Bill de Blasio. The story makes the argument that it was 4chan and the Donald or whoever else that were telling people to give Gabbard your power to make it look like she was actually doing better. And this is great. Here's what they say. The results from the poll on Drudge Report, where Gabbard netted almost 40% of the vote, despite previously polling at less than 2% in national polls, created coverage in itself. The politics blog The Hill and the Daily Mail wrote about Gabbard's performance in the poll, with the Daily Mail calling Gabbard the shock winner in the first poll after the debate. As more mainstream outlets pick up the methodology, I'm going to skip that word, the questionable polls, the likelihood that they will be covered by more prominent news media and political figures increases. With no publicly available data set, it's not possible to know just how heavily potential manipulation factored into the results. The Drudge Report didn't respond to NBC News emails requesting comment or clarification on its online voter fraud potential measures. It's an online poll, dude. Chill. Well, it turns out this guy who wrote this is, my understanding, he's an activist. He's written against, he's written pieces in the past that smeared the people who are saying learn to code, and he was doing it to benefit his friends. It's a very complicated story. He also apparently used to work for the Daily Beast, to which he links to, shamelessly. But here's what they're doing. First of all, Tulsi Gabbard was the most searched for candidate following the first debate on Google. You want to know why she won the debate? Because people genuinely liked what she had to say. This is USA Today. Tulsi Gabbard was the most searched candidate on Google after the Democratic debate in Miami. Don't you think that could translate into people, people searched for her because they supported her, what she was saying? They were like, oh, wow, she's saying something that resonates with me. And then conservatives on Drudge were like, yeah, I really do think she spoke truth. She was the better candidate. She was principled. She challenged people. She knew what she was talking about. If we see the Google search trends, there is a good reason to believe people genuinely thought she did a good job. But of course, they'll say it must have been the trolls because she was polling too low, because they didn't learn from 2016. Vox launders the information, saying the Democratic debates helped demonstrate the dubiousness of online polls. Gabbard and Yang were the big winners, on Drudge at least. They then go on to say, how did Yang win? He didn't really speak. Recycling the NBC story about where they claim, online trolls and 4chan and all that. And you should know, Vox received a huge investment from NBC. You want to know why Andrew Yang won polls as well and was considered prominent? Not because he couldn't. It's not because well, I don't know how to phrase this properly, but I'll say this: it's specifically because he was silenced. So listen, Let Yang Speak was trending on Twitter after Yang accused NBC of cutting his mic. A viral video shows him speaking, and you hear nothing. His name was Andrew Yang's name was also trending on the first day. Because Yang was being cut out, people started talking about him, and they likely started saying, you know what, I think he needs a leg up. Listen, it's not about 4chan and trolls and bots, as they're trying to claim. It's about real grassroots support on the internet, and the media is trying to play it off. They're trying to smear them. No, it's the fringe alt-right supporting them. They're trying to upset. They don't want Biden or Kamala Harris to win. No, people really like Tulsi Gabbard. The progressive left, the actual honest ones, they like Tulsi. And then you have moderates and centrists, common sense Democrats, who like both of them. They're the popular moderate candidates, even though they're not necessarily moderates themselves. So yes, they have real support. But we're seeing 2016 all over again. From the Democrats insulting the people they need to vote, going too far left, and the media ragging on those who actually have the power, the potential to come out on top. Now we have this one. Twitter bots amplify far-right conspiracy about Kamala Harris during debate. Same game. Does this remind you of 2016? It sure does for me. Now, with that first op-ed I showed you, where a now Trump supporter was saying they didn't like Trump in the past, but they're going to vote for him anyway. I'm seeing that sentiment. I kid you not. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I'm not saying it's every person in the country, but I'm hearing this over and over again. That there are people now who are just saying, you know what, they're going to vote for Trump anyway because the Democrats have lost the plot and they don't deserve to win. Interestingly, they say Twitter bots are amplifying the conspiracy theory, but it was a black conservative who brought up questioning Kamala Harris's, ethnicity in the first place. Now, I don't care for arguing about her ethnicity. I'm not going to argue. I don't care where she was born or what her race is. She is certainly a woman of color. Fine. But if it was an American black individual challenging her, shouldn't he have the right to? No. We all know how identity politics work. You are underprivileged and marginalized if you're a person of color and you're on the left. But heaven forbid you're a Candace Owens, and then all of a sudden they're going to call you all the names in the book. So Jeff Giessa made this point on Twitter. He said, let me get this straight. A black man questions how to regard Indian Jamaican Kamala Harris in the context of African American identity and gets savaged by white liberals and media for birtherism? Yes, birtherism began trending. He says, it seems Ali started the perfect controversy. The reaction amplifies his message. It really does. And now we can see, here's what I think is going on with how the debates are playing out, what the DNC has in store. The media, like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, the op-ed writers, they're bringing up a really important point. And it's that the Democrats need to win over the people who voted for Barack Obama and then voted for Trump. But they're even losing people who refuse to vote for Trump. You have people who refused to vote for Trump now saying they're going to do it. You have the walk away campaign. The Democrats are losing this. What they've argued, the progressives, people like Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks, is that they're trying to wake up populist left-wing individuals who normally don't vote. That could work. Don't underestimate that. That could lead to a Democratic victory. But I believe if it's a one-for-one loss and gain, meaning for every independent they lose to Trump, they gain a progressive, Trump is expanding his base. Get it? When you have somebody who refuses to vote for Trump, and you've done something that convinces them to vote for Trump, you have now gained a progressive voter, you're hoping, but you've lost a former Democrat voter, and Trump has gained a voter, meaning Trump is going up one, and you're staying where you are. I don't think they understand this. So ultimately, I think this is, and look, there's other stories I don't want to read because I'll get in trouble on YouTube. But let's just put it this way. The rhetoric is escalating. They're accusing Trump of all sorts of crazy things. You now have a story published in Salon that refers to Trump literally. It's an article headline saying it's time to compare Trump to a certain World War II era politician, if you know what I mean. The H name. I'm going to avoid saying it because YouTube will crack down on my video. I'd much prefer you get to hear what I have to say than I get myself, censored. But let's wrap all this up. The Democrats are embracing insane policies. They're not going to be able to walk this stuff back when it comes to the actual debates with Trump. Middle Americans are now saying they would rather vote for Trump because they need a counterpunch to how insane the Democrats have gotten. The Democrats are in some kind of crazy bubble when it comes to immigration. I have no idea what they're talking about anymore. And they will not save themselves from this. And now they're playing the same silly game. Tulsi Gabbard and Yang supporters are all bots and trolls. It's all fake. Sorry. You're losing it. You've lost the plot. You've gone off the rails. You are chasing woke Twitter. I like to requote what Tulsi Gabbard said. They're putting their finger to the Twitter wind and just saying whatever they're saying on Twitter. Twitter's not real life. I'm sorry. Tulsi Gabbard has real support. And so does Andrew Yang. And they're even skeptic, like anti-feminist types, right? Like the people on YouTube who are called reactionary, who challenge the social justice warriors. They're saying they're for Gabbard now. Tulsi Gabbard went out and said she said identity politics is divisive. I certainly don't think she's perfect, but she has real support from moderates and centrists who challenge the regressive left. That's real potential to win. Tulsi Gabbard is probably the only Democrat, in my opinion, who could get Republicans and Democrats together. Even though she's like social democrat, she is further to the left. She still speaks and talks about important issues like war that get people like, look, I disagree with her on the $15 minimum wage. But the war issue is seriously important, especially as we're broaching some major conflict with Iran. We're standing on the precipice, and we need a president, a commander-in-chief with real military experience who speaks on principle when it comes to foreign policy. And that is big. And she gets my respect because of that. But more importantly, Tulsi Gabbard is principled and is rejecting a lot of this silly nonsense, and she gets my respect for that. She's not perfect. She deserves criticism. So does Yang. But they're going to lie, they're going to cheat, and they're going to steal. Yang's mic was cut off. I believe it. I've seen the video. Google it. Google proof Yang's mic was cut off. You will see him talking and no sound comes out. We know the game they're playing. They don't learn from 2016. I think their plan, they're putting up Biden to show him as the old guard. They have Kamala Harris tear him down so that way she takes the limelight from Biden. Biden's got all of this clout. She's going to now go after him, and it's going to shift to Kamala Harris. I did say I think Kamala Harris would be the nominee. I'm not entirely sure. I don't want to make a hard bet, but I think she will be the nominee. And then they will have a strong Democratic woman of color up against Donald Trump. She's already tried walking back her statement about private health care. She raised her hand. My understanding is this. She raised her hand for abolishing private health care, something that most Americans do not agree with. And then later, after the debates, issues a statement saying, oh, she meant people could choose. She didn't know what abolishment or something like that. Yes, that's how the game is played. She wants the Democrats in the audience to see her signal and then later put out a statement to try and capture the moderates again. Not going to work. We'll see what happens, but I will end by saying this. If this is the game the Democrats are going to play, if the media is going to play this game, well, then you know what? They do deserve to lose. As the first op-ed I pulled up said, plain and simple, Democratic friends, if you go on like this, you're going to lose the elections and you'll deserve it. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going. Look, I could talk for 10 years on what's happening right now. I've got a ton of articles pulled up, but we'll save it for the next segments. They'll be at youtube.com/TimCastNews starting at 6:30 p.m. For those listening on the podcast, that's basically the rest of the show. The order is different. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all in the next story.